Greetings, hard starboard nation. I've been away for a while, and I apologize for my absence. I've had some personal things going on, and so much has been going on in the world of politics that between blogging and FB blogging, face blogging, I guess you'd say, and Twitter and just all manner of other things, something I had to give, and it turned out to be this. So I apologize for my absence. This is the beginning of a couple of video/podcasts to catch everybody up. You're already all familiar with it, I'm sure, but you haven't heard my take on it yet, and the takes of those whose opinions I support and value and respect. And oh man, let's not waste any more time. Without further ado, let's start with the firing of FBI Director James Comey. So, as you all know, on Tuesday, May 7th, Tuesday of last week, Donald Trump abruptly fired FBI Director James Comey. Now, first of all, we have to understand the context of this. James Comey has been the FBI Director for several years. He was the same FBI Director James Comey that announced in June of last year that, in essence, he said that Hillary Ronin Clinton had committed crimes, but she shouldn't be indicted, which makes no sense. His justification for it was that there was no criminal intent, just gross negligence, even though the federal statute in question lists gross negligence as a reason, as a grounds for filing criminal charges for the violation of said statute. Now, Trumpers and cuckservatives or cuckligans, those who sold out to Donald Trump, based on that, accused James Comey of being a Democrat mole. He's part of the deep state! And I think that's an exaggeration. I think James Comey is a lot like Chief Justice John Roberts when he just turned the law on its head in the summer of 2012 and ruled that the individual mandate of Obamacare was a tax, not a fine, even though everybody and their brother knew it was a fine, a penalty. The Obama regime, when they were pushing Obamacare back in 2009 and 2010, called it a fine. I mean, it was an act of jurisprudential alchemy. They say, oh no, well, it's a fine, but we're going to call it a tax so that we can, as an excuse to rule that the individual mandate is constitutional. Even though the entirety of Obamacare is unconstitutional. And the reason that John Roberts did that was because he was trying, so he said, and there is some tradition to this, to protect the Supreme Court from the rough and tumble of partisan politics. He was protecting the institution. He didn't want the Supreme Court to get dragged into politics, blamed for bringing about the collapse of Obamacare or striking down Obamacare and injecting the United States Supreme Court into the heat of the 2012 presidential campaign. He wanted to keep the SCOTUS out of that. And so he ruled the way he did. Leave it to the voters. The voters should decide this, not the United States Supreme Court. And that was undoubtedly institutional trauma from Bush v. Gore back in 2000. So Take that for what you will. I think that the role of the judiciary is to apply, not interpret, but apply the Constitution as written and apply the law as written. And throw out Marbury versus Madison and the whole concept of judicial review, which is not a power that the United States Constitution under Article 3 gives to the Supreme Court, but that's a battle that was lost over 200 years ago. And so Chief Justice Roberts provided the fifth and deciding vote for the wrong decision for what he thought was the right reason. Well, James Comey did something very similar when he recommended against indicting Hillary Ronin Clinton last June. Because the FBI, you see, and in fact the Justice Department overall, is supposed to be impartial, nonpartisan, objective, as is appropriate for law enforcement. They're not supposed to take sides. They're not supposed to become a presidential secret police or anything like that, a White House palace guard. They're supposed to be separate. They're supposed to be objective. And so that is what James Comey thought he was doing. Because it may seem odd to watch Comey's actions over the course of last year, the 2016 presidential campaign, where first he comes out and he says, yes, Mrs. Clinton broke the law, but we shouldn't indict her because there was no criminal intent, even though, like I say, gross negligence is one of the grounds for filing criminal charges. And then remember, 11 days before Election Day, Director Comey, former director now, Comey, announced that there was additional evidence that pertained to the email gate investigation, and so the FBI was opening it back up. And then, like a week later, like 3 or 4 days before the election, Comey popped up again and said, never mind, in classic Emily Latella fashion. So think about that for a minute. First, James Comey pissed off the right, the alt-right, pissed off Republicans. Oh, he's protecting Hillary Clinton. Then, 11 days before the election, he reopens the investigation, thus overjoying Republicans and pissing off Democrats, and of course Democrats to this day, most especially Hillary Rodham Clinton, blame James Comey for costing her the 2016 election. Let's not forget that. And then, several days later, even closer to Election Day, he pulls it back like, psych! And that pisses Republicans off even more. And in other words, in the process of, as he, and maybe he was trying to do this, I don't have any particular reason to think he wasn't, in the process of trying to keep the FBI and the Justice Department, I suppose, out of partisan politics, Comey buried the FBI in the mire of partisan politics instead. He did, in the process of trying to avoid that fate, precisely what got the FBI buried in it, and him most especially. He wanted to keep the FBI out of partisan politics, but his actions buried the FBI in that same swamp. Swamp, see, you get that? Swamp. So, that is kind of the background for all this. I mean, James Comey pissed off everybody, pissed off Republicans, pissed off Democrats. And so, because the FBI directors in the executive branch, he reports to the Attorney General, but serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States, you would think that if Donald Trump wanted to put everything about 2016 behind him, behind the country. Just start off with a clean slate, a fresh start, that he would have eased James Comey out during the transition, right? Isn't that what used to happen? You know, members of the previous administration, especially if it's a change of party, change of, transfer of power, would tender their resignations sometime after election day, between election day and inauguration day, and new president brings in his own people. It used to be how it worked till the federal bureaucracy, the deep state, became such a permanent fixture. And of course, Donald Trump has done virtually nothing to turn over that so-called swamp. So, if Trumpers want to bitch and moan about the deep state, then their hero, Cheeto Jesus, ought to be working a lot harder to throw out out with the old trash, in with the new. You ought to be putting his own people in there, you would think, and yet he's not doing it because, varying degrees of he's lazy and he's an idiot, and maybe he just wants to put his own name on the swamp. What do you think? Yeah, I think so too. But he could have eased Comey out. He could have called Comey in, private meeting, said, well, you know what happened during the 2016 campaign, and you made some mistakes, but I want to have a clean slate. I want to have a fresh start, and so, you're not going to be around in my administration. Don't be a dick about it. Don't be an asshole about it. Just, hey, this is the facts of life. This is what happens. I mean, I can personally attest to that process, that is how it works. I've seen it, not at that lofty level, but I've seen it. That's just the way it works. It's just like a football team when it changes head coaches. Most of the assistant coaches for the previous, the fired coach, don't tend to stick around because the new head coach wants to bring in his own staffers, his own people. Again, I've seen that process firsthand. And so that's what Trump could have done with James Comey. Real simple. Just tell him, that you're a casualty of the 2016 campaign. Thank you for your service. You've been a capable and skilled FBI director for however long he was in that particular post. But we're starting fresh. We're starting over. We're starting anew. It's a new day, clean slate, and the American people, if we're ever going to bring the country together, bind the nation's wounds from the farce that was the 2016 presidential election and campaign, this is the only way we're going to do it. So he should have done it during the transition. Certainly, like back in January. I mean, there were grounds for moving Comey along and bringing somebody else in. So why didn't Trump do that? I mean, we're going to get to this in this video certainly in the next one, about how it appears that Comey tried to Trump tried to corrupt Comey. Trump tried to buy Comey off or to win Comey over. And Comey said, no, I don't think that would do that. That would impact my objectivity. And I know Republicans, Trumpers are going to say, yeah, well, he protected Hillary. Oh, whatever. It didn't matter to me whether or not Trump fired Comey. The problem with Trump firing Comey is how and when he did it. And of course, the Democrats have their own theories, which can be summed up with the word cover up! Now, this is Eric Erickson, ladies and gentlemen, charter member of Never Trump, Trump critic from the right, those of us, the conservative remnant who didn't sell out to Donald Trump. But so this is a context from which this is coming, because in essence, Eric Erickson is taking down the notion, and he makes a very good point here. This is the best reason imaginable against the charge that Donald Trump fired James Comey as part of a cover-up of Russiagate. Now, Donald Trump firing James Comey, means that the FBI is without a head. Donald Trump will get to appoint the new head of the FBI. Boy, that inspires confidence. In the meantime, the FBI is going to be led by Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director. Who is McCabe? Well, he's the husband of a Democrat candidate who was supported by Terry McAuliffe and the Democrat Party. Yeah, brilliant! Let's take a guy that you've been accusing of favoring or of protecting Hillary Clinton last year and replace him with a guy who is an actual Democrat. Yeah, that's intelligent. See, that's right. The left claiming Donald Trump fired Comey to stop an investigation about Russia, and actually there is something to that, but we'll get to that in this video and the next, just handed the FBI over to a man whose wife ran for office as a Democrat and saw her campaign funded by Terry McAuliffe and other friends of Hillary Rodham Clinton. See, this is how you know that Trump really doesn't think anything through. Next, we turn to another fellow conservative Ronin, Ben Shapiro, at the Daily Wire, who points out that there are only two theories as to why Donald Trump fired James Comey. One means Trump is right, the other means Trump will be impeached. Well, they can try. Remember, this is one of those things where I wish people would stop. I wish, on both sides, stop talking about impeachment. Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. Remember what impeachment is. Impeachment is the equivalent of indicting the sitting president of the United States or lesser executive branch officers on grounds for removing them from office. See, impeachment is not a criminal procedure. It is a political one. And in theory, if you had a Congress of one party and president of the other party, the control of Congress, including the House of Representatives, could impeach a president of the other party anytime they wanted. In theory, because the party that has the majority in the House of Representatives, I mean, obviously they have the numbers, so they can impeach the sitting president of the other party. But remember, then it moves over to the Senate, and the Senate, which used to represent the states, remember? See how this all fits together so elegantly? Yay, Founding Fathers. Boo, 17th Amendment. The Senate then conducts the trial. And then the members of the Senate, all 100 of them, vote as to whether to acquit or to convict. A conviction removes the president from office, and you have to have at least 2/3 of those present to actually remove a president from office. Why do I bring all this up? Why do I refresh your memories on all this, provide this remedial civics lesson? Because it is very, very difficult to both impeach and remove a president from office. Very difficult, because the founders made it that way. They didn't want to make it so that impeachment was just an alternative to elections. Down that path goes partisan madness, instability. The republic would not have lasted. It would have inflamed factional passions. Factional being the term that the founders had for political parties and partisan politics. So it's very difficult to do. And it has happened twice. Two presidents in American history, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, were impeached. Neither was removed from office. Neither one. It's very, very difficult to do. Now, bear in mind that if Richard Nixon hadn't resigned after the late Barry Goldwater had his talk with Nixon over in the White House telling him, you're going to be impeached and there might be 15 votes tops in the Senate against your conviction. So you are going to be impeached and you are going to be removed from office. So go out with some dignity, for crying out loud. And that's what Nixon did. So Nixon would have been, if he hadn't resigned, the only president to ever be impeached and removed from office. He's also the only president ever to resign, although Trump might join him in that category for a number of various reasons, eventually. But it's difficult to do. It's not something to be taken lightly. And you hear the Democrats screeching, impeachment, impeachment! What that's saying is, we don't like Trump. God knows why they don't like him. He has more in common with them than he does with his own alleged party. But they shriek that because they don't like the results of the 2016 election. It's as simple as that. The Democrats are looking at impeachment as an alternative to elections. Because, of course, remember how Democrats think. If they win elections, well, that's just the way of things. That's normal. That's the way things should be. Whereas if they lose elections, well, then they, refer to Rule 1. And so, therefore, well, we don't lose elections. So if we lose an election, well, it must be because the other side cheated. Or the other side did some horrible skullduggery or some evil scheme to deny us our rightful place, or you know how we think. So when Democrats screech about impeachment, it's just they're continuing the 2016 election into 2017. But I wish people would stop tossing around the word impeachment because it's not something to be taken lightly. At the very most, it's premature. All right? And as in the little Eric Erickson blurb that we just discussed, there is a very good point to be made that somebody as reckless, as verbally incontinent, totally lacking in both brains and self-control as Donald Trump would be very unlikely to be a participant in a super secret dark conspiracy with the Russians and be able to keep his mouth shut about it. That's a very good argument against the notion that Trump himself was colluding with the Russians to influence the 2016 election. But let's get back to these two theories of why Trump fired James Comey and Ben Shapiro, or Ben Shapiro's two theories about why this happened. With Donald Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey, the political world has exploded into wild accusations and counter-accusations of corruption and bias. Amidst all the hubbub, the why behind Comey's firing boils down to two theories. Only one can be correct. If it's the first theory, Trump did the right thing and Democrats are using the firing to make political hay in scurrilous fashion. If it's the second, well, again, I really wish people would stop tossing this word around, but if it's the second, Trump may be on his way to impeachment, although the earliest that would be 2019. Now, here's the first theory. Trump fired Comey for incompetence. This would go back to his do-si-doing about Emailgate. First, Ah, she doesn't need to be indicted. Ah, we're reopening the investigation. Ah, never mind. That's the it would be that, and as I laid out, that was ample grounds for doing so, which begs the question of why Trump didn't do it 4 or 5 months ago rather than waiting until last Tuesday. I mean, especially since, remember, the first promise that Trump broke was lock her up. First promise he broke. Ah, leave her alone. Oh, she's a good friend. Oh, Said it throughout the campaign. These two people are close friends. This is all kabuki theater. This is all BS. Don't buy into it. But, partisan passions, the red haze, as it were. So this is the most obvious answer as to why Comey was fired. Multiple letters from regime members suggest that Trump was told over and over again that Comey needed to go. That's for a variety of reasons. Number one, Comey never should have issued his July 2016 exoneration of Hillary Clinton. If he thought she shouldn't be prosecuted, he should have made that recommendation and then shut the hell up. Instead, he felt the necessity to protect Attorney General Loretta Lynch and supposedly the FBI, and so he spilled the beans on the myriad reasons she should have been prosecuted, demonstrated that he had rewritten the law to protect Hillary, and then let her off the hook. This necessitated Comey appearing before Congress to explain himself and pledging to keep them updated. Number two, under the first theory, Comey issued the infamous October 28th letter, 10 days before the election, informing Congress that the FBI had uncovered new emails in the Anthony Weiner investigation. The letter itself was a bombshell that rocked the Hillary campaign just days out from a presidential election. Comey then rushed the turnaround so that he could exonerate her again, as we already discussed, a couple of days before the election, but according to the Democrats, Comey was now responsible for electing Trump. Number three, under the first theory, Comey appeared before Congress to explain himself and instead made an ass of himself. He even misstated the evidence regarding Huma Abedin Weiner. I guess, I'm not sure if she's filed for divorce. I don't know if it's become final yet, but anyway, necessitating the FBI to inform Congress. In short, Comey had lost both the trust of the Trump regime and the trust of the public. And, of course, the trust of the Democrats. There was no reason not to fire him, for the reasons I've already discussed. That's what Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein stated in his letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, calling for Comey's firing. I cannot defend the director's handling of the conclusion of the investigation of Commissar Clinton's emails, and I do not understand his refusal to accept the nearly universal judgment that he was mistaken. The FBI is unlikely to regain public and congressional trust until it has a director who understands the gravity of the mistakes and pledges never to repeat them. Now, we turn to theory number two. And these are not necessarily mutually exclusive, all right? Trump fired Comey to stop the Russia investigation. That's the alternative theory. Trump knows that he's connected to the Russian election manipulation, and he's afraid that Comey would have gotten to the bottom of it. To kill the investigation, he fired Comey. This is the case the Democrats are making today, calling for the appointment of a special prosecutor. And I know we're going to get to that, I promise. It's unbelievable, man. It's like I said to somebody on Twitter yesterday, if the Russians did want Trump to win, the last 2 weeks are a real good indication of why. I mean, remember on the old Get Smart show, remember what the enemy intelligence agency, remember Maxwell Smart worked for Control? That was the name of the good guy intelligence operation. Remember what the bad guy intelligence operation, intelligence agency, intelligence organization, whatever. Remember what that was called? Chaos. Should have had Donald Trump as a mascot. Again, this is the case the Democrats are making today, calling for the appointment of a special prosecutor, which since has actually happened because of Trump. Not necessarily because Trump is a Russian stooge, but because Trump is a moron. Oh, boy, I tell you what. Idiots like Bill de Blasio of New York City are saying that this is Nixonian, a soft sort of Saturday Night Massacre. Google it, look it up on Wikipedia, that'll tell you all you need to know. Democrats are universally condemning Comey's firing, even though tribalism, ladies and gentlemen, even though just days ago they were calling for him to be shit-canned. Oh my God, this is nuts. That's hypocrisy and dirty politics, of course. And Trump hasn't named an interim director. The current guy below Comey is as we discussed, a Democrat. Or said that the investigation will be shut down. At the very least, it will be difficult for him to ram through a patsy who will kill the investigation at this point. With that said, here's the Democrats' strongest case that something fishy is going on. Number one, under theory number two. The timing of the firing is weird. They're stating that Trump could have fired Comey from his election conduct right after he took office. That's obviously correct. We've already discussed it. A counter-argument that Attorney General Sessions recused himself from the Trump-Russia investigation and that Rosenstein was only confirmed in his position 13 days ago is belied by the fact that Sessions himself weighed in on Comey's firing, stating, quote, "Based on my evaluation and for the reasons expressed by the Deputy Attorney General in the attached memorandum, I have concluded that a fresh start is needed at the leadership of the FBI." That conclusion could easily have been drawn 4 or 5 months ago. Easily. Number two, under theory number two. Trump won't shut up about Russia. The firing comes the day after Trump tweeted incessantly about the Trump-Russia investigation and openly called for it to be shut down. This is what is so vexing about when Trump supporters stubbornly, irrationally, insanely continue to insist that Trump knows what he's doing. He's playing fifth-dimensional chess. He's just so much smarter than you. You don't realize he's got them right where he wants them. No, he doesn't. There is a reason why there are protocols and traditions in place in Washington, D.C. There is a reason why politics is a profession. I said this throughout the campaign last year. That politics is a profession. That the presidency is not an entry-level job. Remember the analogy I used? I used a couple of them. If you needed heart surgery to save your life, would you get the best heart surgeon you could find? Or would you go down to the local Sears and get Mr. Goodrich? If you were in O.J. Simpson's position, well, no, Simpson was guilty, but never mind. If you were Sam Shepard, that's a better metaphor. If you were Sam Shepard and you were being falsely accused of murdering your wife and you needed the best legal representation that you could get, the best, but your own dream team, would you get them? Or would you get Joe Pesci's character from My Cousin Vinny. What made people think that the presidency was an entry-level job? Well, anybody can be president. Bullshit! Everybody who is a naturalized U.S. citizen at the time of their birth is eligible once they reach 35 years of age, but they're not qualified. I'll tell you what, man. If I, through whatever impossible circumstances, found myself to be the President of the United States, you know what I'd be doing? I would be saying, help me. If somehow, and God knows what this would do to my blood pressure, but if I, through some whatever miraculous set of circumstances, Trump was out, I was in, I guarantee you, I would be saying to the advisors arrayed around me, I'd call a meeting and I'd say, hey, help me. Give me the best advice I can get. I'm not just shooting from the hip, shooting off my mouth. I don't have narcissistic personality disorder. I don't think I know it all. I would be intimidated by the position. And that's Trump's problem. He's too stupid, too blinded by his own egotism to realize how far in over his head he really is. This is why you don't elect neophytes. This is why you don't elect outsiders. I guess another way you could put it is, this is what burn it down looks like, and it ain't pretty, is it? You want people who know what they're doing. You want a president who knows what he's doing. I mean, my God, did Trump have any collusion with the Russians over the 2016 election? I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. The argument that he can't keep his mouth shut about anything is a pretty good indication that he didn't. But if you're innocent, then why keep acting guilty? That's what Trump is doing. He's acting like he's guilty as sin. That's not saying he is guilty, but that's how he's acting. This is why character matters. This is why temperament matters. This is what we were talking about last year, Never Trumpers, when we talked about fitness for the office. Presidential temperament. This is what we were talking about. Trump may well have not had any connection with any collusion with the Russians over the 2016 election, but he won't shut up about this scandal. If he'd shut up about it, the Trumpers are just going batshit insane over, the media, the deep state, blah, 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 conspiracies everywhere. No, they're not conspiracies everywhere. Trump keeps these things alive personally. He keeps handing the media, handing his enemies every scrap, every mountain ranges of PR ammunition to use against him. He won't shut up about Russia, even though it would be in his best interest to do so, personally and politically. The firing came the day after Trump tweeted incessantly about the Trump-Russia investigation and openly called for it to be shut down. See, that's what we know as, and what is defined as, context. And we have learned since then that, yeah, he did fire Comey because Comey wouldn't shut the investigation down. That's not necessarily saying that Trump is guilty. What it is saying is that quite likely Trump was just personally offended. His ego is personally offended that Comey wouldn't do what he told him to do and shut down the investigation, even though he can't do that, ethically speaking, professionally speaking. And why does Trump want the investigation shut down? Because it offends him. But trying to shut it down makes him look guilty. How brilliant do you have to be to figure these things out? You know, the irony is not lost on me that a lot of the criticism of Donald Trump from us conservative Ronins is really directed toward why is he being so stupid? Why is he acting against his own interests? Our criticism of Trump should be Trump supporters' criticism of Trump because he's blowing off parts of his body every single day, metaphorically speaking. Trumplicans should be making these criticisms. Why are we having to make them for him? Because they're brain-dead, brainwashed cultists, that's why. Trump also changed the header on his Twitter account to deny any collusion with Russia, which is an odd move, to say the least. And then he dropped this line in his letter firing Comey, which smacks of the lady doth protest too much. Quote, While I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau. Number 3, under theory number 2. Trump fired Comey the day after the left latched onto former acting Attorney General Sally Yates' testimony, pinning all the Democrats' Trump-Russia conspiracy theories on the FBI investigation. Trump had tweeted out the testimony of former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper Caper, who said he had... You can't convince me that when he was a young man, his nickname wasn't Clap. Sorry. Who said he had no information linking the Trump campaign to collusion with Russia. Of course, that's not saying that such information doesn't exist, just that he didn't have it. Yates immediately stated that Clapper Caper wasn't in the loop on the FBI investigation. It all comes down to the FBI investigation for the left, and Trump just fired the director in charge of that same investigation. Trump isn't going to appoint a special prosecutor. Of course, Rod Rosenstein has since done so for him. Because of Trump. Because of Trump's stupidity and his big mouth. Trumperia. Just, because of things like this. This is what he tweeted out on May 8th. The Russia-Trump collusion story is a total hoax. When will this taxpayer-funded charade end? That led to the appointment of a special prosecutor. Not an independent counsel. That statute sunsetted 18 years ago, and good riddance. But now we got a special prosecutor. God. I've never seen anything like this, where there may be no there, but the target, the number one object, or number one point around which all of this shitstorm is revolving, keeps the storm alive, keeps the scandal alive, deepens the scandal even though there may be nothing at its heart. Jesus. Oh boy, I tell you what. So that means this situation will continue to boil. Congress will continue to probe, and Trump will continue to fulminate. At the very least, this is the most amazing season of The Apprentice yet. See what we mean by the tabloid presidency? Fellow conservative Ronin Jonah Goldberg weighed in next at the corner. NationalReview.com. There's much we don't know. There's much we need to know. There's much we never know. But my initial reactions to the news of the James Comey firing is this. Number one, I disagree with many of my friends who say this termination was a long time in coming. I think many of Comey's decisions are easily criticized, but when you look back at the decisions he made, and when he made them, I believe Comey was put in one no-win situation after another, and he made defensible decisions. Your mileage may vary. Hillary Clinton tested the limits of put people in institutions in an untenable position. I don't think Comey should have been fired, but I can see the argument going the other way. Again, your mileage may vary. Number two, that said, I simply don't buy the case made in the letter from Donald Trump. I'm very skeptical that Attorney General Jeff Sessions was the chief driver of or lobbyist for this decision, as was confirmed only a day later by Trump himself. Because Trump. I'm also skeptical that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, on the job for all of 2 weeks, pulled the trigger on the firing of the FBI director. This just doesn't make any sense. Nor does the idea that Donald Trump believes that Comey's actions during the campaign were grounds for this termination. That fuels the idea that Comey treated Hillary Clinton so unfairly, or according to some, too fairly, that he had to be fired. Remember, the first promise that Trump broke after Election Day was lock her up. There's no reason to believe Donald Trump subscribes to either view. I suspect Trump wanted to fire Comey and that they'd scrambled to find a narrative to support it, which was confirmed maybe a day later. Number three, I keep reading that this is a Nixonian move. And I get that, but that's not clear. Nixon fired people in the vain hope that he could stop the bleeding. There's no evidence that Trump was trying to kill the Russiagate investigation yet, although since then there's quite a bit of indication that that's exactly what he was trying to do. Number four, moreover, Nixon was a brilliant, cynical politician. I have a hard time seeing the political brilliance in this decision. Trump does not help himself with this line from his letter to Comey. Again, as I shared earlier. Quote, "Well, I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation. I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau." And remember, presidents don't write their own statements. They have staff to do it for them, and certainly Trump doesn't even read, much less write. In fact, technically, we don't even know if he's literate, but that's another story. But his staff included this. His staff didn't have the brains not to include something so compromising in the termination letter. See, I get what Trump thinks he's doing by saying this, but politically it's the equivalent of saying it's not about the money. Yes, it is. You know how that works. Number five, also, for a guy who is clearly desperate to get people to move on from the Russia talk, Trump keeps doing things that make it easier to keep that storyline alive. The wiretapping tweets breathed new life into that story for a frickin' month. But that's nothing compared to what confirmation hearings for a new FBI director will do to that storyline. In other words, the phrase "leave well enough alone" comes to mind. But that cuts directly against Trump's instincts now, doesn't it? Which tells you all you need to know, that Trump's instincts are moronic. And finally, number 6, this might have been the right thing to do on the merits. Trump may even be doing this for all the right and stated reasons, although I think we can conclusively say, no, he's not. But this, too, points to the mess Hillary Clinton created for herself and the country. If Comey needed to be fired, a defensible position, that's downstream of the hot mess that Hillary Clinton dropped on all of us. Here's some more context for you. Headline at Red State, Joe Cunningham. Russia investigation subpoenas went out hours before Comey firing. Cue the face on. Amid the turmoil of the firing of James Comey as director of the FBI is the speculation as to what this means about the ongoing investigation into Russia's involvement with the 2016 presidential election. It appears, however, that the investigation was on as a grand jury had issued subpoenas hours prior to Comey's firing. Oh my God. Here's the quote from CN. Federal prosecutors have issued grand jury subpoenas to associates of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, whom Trump has now publicly stated he wants to bring back. Boy, the pardon will be fun. It'll be that shitstorm might be the biggest one yet. A former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, or maybe once in the future, seeking business records. In fact, I think Alla Pundit was saying on Twitter that Trump wanted to bring Michael Flynn back as FBI director. Sure, why not? We're in a land of insanity now anyway. What the hell? Makes you wonder, is there anything, this is a question that has been asked rhetorically before, but is there anything that Trump supporters wouldn't defend? I mean, imagine that. Imagine that Trump pardons Michael Flynn, brings him back, and names him FBI director. Yeah, that'll show him. Yeah, screw you. Oh, boy. A pebble against a tsunami. That's what Trump is against the so-called deep state. Anyway, federal prosecutors have issued grand jury subpoenas to associates of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, seeking business records as part of the ongoing probe of Russian meddling in last year's election. According to people familiar with the matter, CNN learned of the subpoenas hours before Donald Trump fired FBI Director James Comey. I should hasten to add, while I think of it, always do things while you think of them, especially when you've reached my age. The FBI investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election had been a counterintelligence operation until the last week. Now it is also a criminal investigation. You heard me right. Prior to the last 10 days or so, the FBI investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election had been purely counterintelligence operation, nothing criminal. Now it is also a criminal investigation. This happened as a direct result of Donald Trump's dumbass actions of the past 10 days. You know, it's almost like we never Trumpers are trying to throw him rope, and he, rather than grabbing it and being pulled to safety, he's braiding it into a noose for himself. And his own dumbass supporters are cheering him on. Why, the world really is upside down, isn't it? The subpoenas represent the first sign of a significant escalation of activity in the FBI's broader investigation begun last July into possible ties between Trump campaign associates and Russia, close quote. I'm also on record many times, I've said this over the past few months, that where Russiagate will ultimately end up is that it will bag a few minor scalps, like a Michael Flynn or a Carter Page or a Paul Manafort, but it won't touch Trump, because that's where all of these scandals post-Watergate end up. The Democrats have spent almost half a century trying to recreate Watergate. And of course, Watergate was something that fell right into their laps, totally unsuspected. They didn't know it was coming. They couldn't believe their own eyes. I mean, Nixon, without realizing he was doing so, committed political suicide. He offered himself up to them. The left, the Democrat Party, the media, they didn't have to do anything. Nixon did it for them. And in a not the same way, but in an equivalent way, Donald Trump is doing the same damn thing. And here we are, never-Trumpers, offering constructive criticism. You see, what does one point this illustrates? This is where fight gets you. If you purport to be on the right, this is where it gets you. There's fighting. How long have I said this? How many years have I said this? There is fighting intelligently, fighting smartly, and there's fighting stupidly. Because it all gets back to strategy. It all gets back to knowing the lay of the land, knowing your enemies, knowing how strong you are versus how strong they are, what they have on their side, what you have on your side, their assets, your assets, how they match up, game it out. This is why Republicans can't act like Democrats. That's the lesson that Nixon never learned. He thought he could play by the same rules as the Democrats did. He thought he could have secret taping of Oval Office conversations. He thought he could use the same dirty tricks that LBJ and JFK and FDR had before him. He found out, no, he couldn't. That is a one-way street. It's not fair, but it is. It's a one-way street. Republicans cannot fight fire with fire when it comes to Democrat dirty tricks. They don't get to do that. Republicans have to be smarter, and Republicans have no margin for error. They can't make mistakes. Donald Trump has been making mistakes ever since he took office, and he won't stop making mistakes because that is his nature. He's reckless and he's stupid, but he thinks he's smarter than everybody else. That is a dangerous and toxic and disastrous combination. And that is in turn why we said, never Trumpers, throughout last year's campaign, this man does not have the temperament, he does not have the intelligence, he does not have the character, he is not fit for the office of President of the United States. And he is going to do more damage to the Republican Party and the conservative movement in 4 or fewer years than Hillary Clinton could ever have done in 8 years. Because the country survived 8 years of Bill Clinton. It survived 8 years of Barack Obama. It could have survived 4 years of Hillary Clinton. And the country has survived a civil war. It survived 2 global wars. It's not a question of the country surviving, although in its present form, one has to wonder. But the Republican Party, let's put it this way, let's ratchet down the scale a bit. The Republican Party could have survived 4 years of Hillary Clinton. It was our considered assertion, being vindicated in spades every single day, that the Republican Party could not survive 4 or fewer years of Donald Trump. I think we've been proven right on that. Unless Trump stops being Trump. And Trump can't stop being Trump because nobody controls Trump, not even Trump. Now, Flynn's people aren't talking about the subpoenas right now, but this, coupled with the Sally Yates testimony yesterday, indicates that there were some serious issues with Flynn. And of course, Donald Trump loves Michael Flynn because Michael Flynn is a spear-carrying, palm frond-waving Trump toady. Loyalty, remember? Of course, the information coming out of the White House indicates that Comey's firing was for an unrelated issue. And Trump confirmed the very next day that, no, I wanted to fire Comey long before this. And it's not really clear when or if these timelines converge. It is very hard, however, to imagine that Trump would so brazenly fire Comey over the subpoenas, considering that in his letter to Comey, he states Comey told him 3 times he wasn't under investigation. But no, it's not hard to imagine at all, because he confirmed it the next day. Of course, that will not stop the Democrats, who have already decided that this is the very worst thing in the world, part 934. But as I keep saying to people, who cares what the Democrats think? The Democrats are out of power. They're in the minority in the House. They're in the minority in the Senate. They don't have the White House. They've been decimated at the state level. The Democrats are at their lowest ebb in 80 years. 90 years. What am I talking about? 80? 90 years. Democrats are at their lowest ebb since before FDR. And they're giving every indication by their behavior of keeping themselves there indefinitely. The Democrats are irrelevant. They've made themselves irrelevant. What they think, what they do does not matter. Trump is in office. The Republicans are in power. They are the ones that should be the focus of public deliberations. Parenthetically, a programming note, I have noted as time has gone on that these videos / podcast simulcasts are getting longer and longer. So I'm going to break them into 2-hour segments. That pertains more to the podcast end of it, but it'll be better for those of you watching on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/hardstarboardradio. So just bear that in mind as we go forward. Besides, I'll get more podcasts out of it. That's kind of cool. Especially since I missed last Sunday's podcast. And in order to catch up, it's not going to be Sunday only. So I'm not saying I'm going back to weekdays on blogtalkradio.com/HSR network, but I'm considering it. And at least for the time being, it'll be kind of an amalgam of the two. Now, Jay Caruso listed 5 reasons that Trump's firing of Comey was a terrible idea. Understand, most of my more noteworthy conservative Ronin brethren are lawyers. Jay Caruso, David French, some others. So they know whereof they speak from a legal standpoint. Now, it's a decision that sent shockwaves across Washington, D.C. and the media. Donald Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey is an event nobody saw coming. The aftermath will take some time to sort out, but there is nothing good that can come from what happened. Trump created a mess with this firing, even if he manages to articulate reasons for it beyond the tired excuse that it was over Comey's abysmal handling of the Clinton case forever ago. Now, contrary to the lamentations of Hollywood morons, firing Comey is not an impeachable offense. Yeah, that's another thing that this is what gets back to stop tossing around the word impeachment, impeachable, offense, etc., etc. How on God's green earth, how in God's name was the President of the United States dismissing somebody who worked for him in the executive branch, who served at his pleasure, in and of itself an impeachable offense? Now, maybe they mean in the context of cover up! But Trump had every constitutional authority to fire James Comey anytime he wanted. That's why I say the issue is not that Trump fired James Comey, but how and when he did so. But he had the authority to do so. Nobody questions that, or should anyway. I mean, anybody who thinks that impeachment will happen is living in a fantasy world. Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Trump is was well within his rights to take this action, but the political implications are another matter. Here's where we get to the heart of the matter here. Here are 5 reasons why it was an awful decision. Number 1, the timing. Discussed that in the last segment. This was bad. The FBI is currently investigating Russia's role in the 2016 election, and whether or not Trump campaign staff were colluding with Russian agents. The mere appearance of impropriety makes the decision come off as political. Again, that's how you have to look at things, especially if you have an R after your name. Remember, the Democrats will always have a much greater margin for error. The Democrats will always be protected by the media. Republicans never will be. That's just the reality of the situation. And you can get as ragingly angry and pissed off about that as you want, but you're not going to change it. The media are what they are. They're not elected. They cannot be coerced because, hey, First Amendment, freedom of the press. If the press wants to be partisan, they have the freedom to do that. That's just the reality. You've got to work within the reality as it is. Or as Nick Fury said to Steve Rogers in Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, we take the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be, because that is the first step toward changing said world. You can't change the world if you're fantasizing about things that don't exist. Number 2, the GOP cannot do his bidding if they have a single brain cell between them. If Trump believes he is going to get the FBI director of his choice, in other words, a crony, which gets to the point that is exactly what Trump wants. Trump wants a crony. He wants a partisan Justice Department in his favor, exactly like Obama had. You know, when Trump rails against the media, it's not that he wants a fair and balanced and objective and responsible media. He wants a media that is partisan in his favor, just like Obama had. Trump has Obama envy, in other words. Trump envies the fact that Obama had the media in his pocket, on his side, that he totally partisanized the Justice Department, that he totally partisanized the FBI. He wants that for himself. That's what he wants. That's why he bashes the media, because they won't take his side. How dare they oppose me? We'll open up the libel laws and shut them down. Yeah, no, you're not. Well, I'd love to see him try. I can just imagine what the shitstorm would be then. Trump will have to appoint a person that could very well be more dogmatic when he or she takes over the investigations. And anybody who is objective and professional could not just walk in and shut everything down. Which, of course, gets to the special prosecutor. We'll get to that eventually. Who is the epitome of professionalism, integrity, activity. He will do a good and credible job. The results from the Russiagate investigation that he produces will be as close to unimpeachable, no pun intended, as you can get. And then that'll settle the matter. And if Trump is innocent, then he should just let let the special counsel for on Russiagate do his job, leave him alone. In fact, the appointment of a special counsel, special prosecutor, should keep it out of the headlines. And that's exactly where Trump should leave it. That's exactly where Trump should want it. But of course, he won't leave it there. And there are stories that he's already trying to undermine any special prosecutors. So, see, this is the wages of fight, fight, fight. And if you don't fight, fight, fight intelligently, then you're just going to make things worse. All right? You're just going to make things worse. Number 3, it gives Democrats secure use of the C word. That word is corruption. Many people think the GOP lost control of Congress in 2006 because of the Iraq War. Well, that was part of it. The reality is Republicans lost because of the culture of corruption surrounding the GOP, with scandals such as those involving Jack Abramoff, Tom DeLay, who was later exonerated, and Mark Foley and Larry Craig. Remember Wide Stance, that whole embarrassment. All contributing to a depressed GOP turnout. Think about that in the context of 2018, ladies and gentlemen. Think how exhausted. Think how... You see, this is why the Republican Party left me, so I just took the hint and left the Republican Party. Can you imagine having to defend Donald Trump and his idiocies every single day? I'll tell you what. Now, I've shared with you all my hypertension issues. I got reacquainted with them this week. When I have my medication is in place and the proper dosage, my blood pressure is normal. But I don't handle stress well. I don't handle stress well. When I went to my follow-up doctor appointment this week, my blood pressure was 25 points higher than it was after the appointment. I don't handle stress well. I can't. If I had to work in the White House communications shop, I'd be dead. My head would pop like a tick from the blood pressure, from the stress. I have never quit a job in my life. I would have to. If I had somehow was working in the White House communications shop, I'd have to quit that job because it would kill me. I can't even imagine it. And just as a partisan out in the grassroots, trying to defend this shit every single day. And the only thing that Trumpers can do, and I see it every day these last 2 weeks, is just go into total, utter, and complete denial. The Chip Diller syndrome. All is well! No, it's not. Number 4, it's firing James Comey was a sign of weakness, not strength. I mean, Trumpers can blather about Trump draining the swamp instead of putting his name on it all they want, but somebody in a position of strength does not pull a move like this. A stunt, you might say. Someone in a position of strength lets the chips fall where they may, or let me start this again. Somebody in a position of strength and who is innocent and knows it and has nothing to hide lets the chips fall where they may and deals with whatever consequences result. Trump's termination of Comey makes him look afraid, and the operative terms here being, the operative phrase being, makes him look afraid of what Comey was going to do. Now, was Trump actually afraid of what Comey was going to do? Well, maybe, maybe not. But that's how it looks. And in politics, perception is 9/10 of reality. That's why I say Trump may be innocent as the wind-driven snow, but he's acting guilty as sin. The blackest sin. He's not helping himself. Assuming he is innocent. And number 5, the media onslaught is going to be unlike anything we have seen in a long, long time. Donald Trump will attempt to defend this action via Twitter. And he did so in a way that made it worse, as he always does. Bank on it. He did. He'll scream, "Fake news!" at every opportunity because the media is not going to let up, nor should they. Because he hands them the ammunition. The fact this took place hours before the media reported the Justice Department issued subpoenas to private business associates of Michael Flynn stinks to high heaven. Again, perception. Perception. This is what I don't understand why my former friend and colleague Douglas V. Gibbs, what is wrong with him? He is the one who spent years asserting, charging, accusing the GOP of having been infiltrated by progressives. Now what's happened in the biggest way imaginable with Donald Trump, and his only answer is, "Oh, you're falling for the left's deceptions. Oh, you're falling for the left's plot. Oh, you're falling for the left." Falling for the left's conspiracy. Wake the fuck up, Doug! Wake up! Donald Trump is burning down the Republican Party right before your very eyes. Feel free to bleep out that last part. I know Blog Talk Radio will. See, Trump stepped in it with this move. It is not 59-dimensional chess. It is not draining the swamp. It is a politically calculated move that will likely blow up in his face, and it's been doing so ever since. The making things worse didn't take long to kick off. And, of course, it was on Twitter. And Jay Caruso chronicled that for us at Red State. Trump offers his lame excuses for firing James Comey. Now, leave it to President Tantrum to run to Twitter to give his reasons for firing James Comey, even though the letter was supposed to have covered that. A sane POTUS would have just left it with the letter and then let the media speculate. Let the media say, well, that's not the real reason, but all it would have been is speculation. All it would have been is noise. Trump goes out and confirms the noise. There are people on both sides who are off the rails on this one. Hardcore Trump supporters are defending the move, saying it's in line with Trump's promise to drain the swamp. While some on the left are demanding the introduction of artificial impeachment for what he did. The reality, of course, is somewhere in the middle. The Trumpers excusing Trump cannot explain why he waited nearly 4 months to flush swamp creature Comey down the drain, and the impeached crowd cannot comprehend that what Trump did was certainly within his purview. Still, Trump is going to be Trump. He always comes back to that. And so instead of holding a press conference to explain his actions or just letting the letter speak for itself, he took to Twitter. Oh my God. Buckle your seatbelts, put your trays in the upright and locked position. Crying Chuck Schumer stated recently, "I do not have confidence in him, James Comey, any longer. Then acts indignant." Yeah? Democrats are hypocrites. That's been the case, forever. This is why the media bias topic just never interests me. You say the media is biased. I say the sky is blue when clouds aren't in the way. The sun comes up in the morning, sets at night. The water is wet. You're not breaking any new ground here. I mean, Trump isn't wrong. Schumer is an idiot. But how about cooling it with the schoolyard nicknames? Because that's Trump. The Democrats have said some of the worst things about James Comey, including the fact that he should be fired. But now they play so sad. Yeah, because you were the one who fired him. I mean, they called for Comey's firing even though the one that would have fired him was Trump. So in other words, the Democrats, the media, pardon the redundancy, they're going to say those things regardless. So who cares what they say? Again, it's not breaking any new ground. Now, yes, but you've praised Comey going back to last year, Trump that is, and now you're pretending his conduct with Hillary Clinton is a fireable offense? Yeah, this is a good time for it. Go ahead, play it.
Bullshit! 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 You're not still the reason to play. Bullshit! Let's go bullshit!
Next in the Trump tweet storm, James Comey will be replaced by someone who will do a far better job bringing back the spirit and prestige of the FBI. Well, to believe this, one has to think the prestige of the FBI is gone. The only ones who are saying that are the still angry Hillary supporters who blame Comey for her loss, whom Trump just called hypocrites. Which they are hypocrites, but then so is Trump. Comey lost the confidence of almost everyone in Washington, Republican and Democrat alike. When things calm down, they will be thanking me. Whereas just weeks ago, Trump said the opposite. Quote, "Don't forget, when Jim Comey came out, he saved Hillary Clinton. People don't realize that. He saved her life." That's what Trump said just a few weeks ago. Because Trump, too, is a filthy hypocrite. See, that confidence didn't diminish over the last few weeks. Once again, Trump is not helping himself. Yes, Trumpers, this is all constructive criticism. If Trump would follow our advice which you people should be demanding of your cult leader, then he would be in much better shape today. But, of course, Donald Trump doesn't take advice. I remember back in the campaign, people said, Trump supporters said, well, he's going to surround himself with the best people, conservative people, and they'll steer him in the right direction. Well, aside from perhaps Secretary of Defense James Mattis and current National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, he really hasn't listened to anybody because he's Donald Trump. And nobody controls Trump, which was one of his selling points as far as Trump supporters were concerned. So which is it? Again, the cognitive dissonance is deafening, ladies and gentlemen. There's something we have to remember in the course of all of this, and that is that it's kind of the undercurrent underlying the whole Trumpetancy. And that is that Donald Trump is a congenital inveterate liar. Not surprisingly, Eric Erickson brings this back to our attention, a useful reminder. Believing this President of the United States often requires people to believe as true so much that is not so. That's a real problem, and the Comey situation shows it. In other words, trust. Without honesty and integrity, there can be no trust, you see. And I wish the White House would pay attention to this for its own sake. Burning down the Republican Party. Donald Trump will, on any given day, contradict himself dozens of times within minutes, if not seconds, in ways that are impossible to reconcile. The result is that many people just refuse to believe anything he says, which is really, rationally speaking, the best default position to take. Especially if you don't have a whole lot of time to focus on determining, well, was he telling the truth here? Was he not telling the truth there? Most people have lives. They don't have time to devote endlessly to this stuff like we political junkies do. So there is normal partisanship and now hyper-partisanship in Washington, D.C. In other words, tribalism, and it is bipartisan. The mere existence of Donald Trump in the White House is enough for many to set their hair on fire and scream, even though those on the left have more in common with Trump than Trump has in common with the party he hijacked. His consumption of oxygen and exhaling of carbon dioxide is enough to drive some on the left into fits of irrational rage. And like I say, it's irrational, and I just told you why. But there are others who would normally be willing to give the president some benefit of the doubt, and even those people are having trouble doing so because of the president's constant war with the truth. Meanwhile, Douglas V. Gibbs just ignores it all and keeps puttering away at the left this, the left that, even though the left are irrelevant. And meanwhile, the vehicle that he claimed had been penetrated by progressives is now actually being destroyed by one, and he can't even be spared the time of day to even look. See, his supporters should acknowledge this. They may say he is joking. They may say he knows it's not true, but they should acknowledge that the president regularly and routinely contradicts himself, and then, to compound it, denies he ever made the first contradictory statement. You know who that sounds like? Remember who flip-flopped on a particular issue in a Democrat debate in late 2007 5 times in 3 minutes and 12 seconds? Sound familiar? Two sides of the same coin, Trumpers. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. Aside from gender, they are exactly the same. I believe Trump fired James Comey because of Comey's handling of, well, you might believe it, of the Clinton emails. People in the White House I trust have long known are honest people are adamant that Comey's testimony before Congress and the FBI that the FBI had to walk back was the straw that broke the camel's back. Comey had to go to restore trust in the FBI. Again, though, because of Trump's infidelity to the truth, a lot of people who would normally give the president the benefit of the doubt are not doing so. Why? Because he doesn't deserve it. Today, word is leaking out that the president will not move the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This, again, is something President Trump promised repeatedly to do. This is another broken promise. It is the con, in other words. Con! C-O-N. If Trump continues his war on truth and continues breaking oft-repeated promises to his base, he will soon find that even his most ardent supporters have trouble believing him. Maybe, but you can guarantee that they will never admit it. Here's another fun aspect of this fiasco brought to us by another respected conservative Ronin and one of my favorites at Red State, Susan Wright. No one should find out they're fired by seeing it announced on television. Although, when you really stop and think about it, given that this is Donald Trump we're talking about, could it have transpired any other way? Because, of course, Trump is a coward. Couldn't do it face to face. Couldn't fire Comey face to face. See, I've seen the sharp and definitive divide between opinions about FBI Director or former FBI Director James Comey's firing. Folks either think it was an awful idea with insidious intent or it was a long overdue occurrence. And actually, as usually is the case with Trump, it was a bit of both, in Star-Lord's turn of phrase. But here's my question. What do you think of Comey reportedly finding out about his firing from breaking news on television? The word is that they went to the FBI offices to deliver the termination letter to Comey, but he was already in Los Angeles to speak with new recruits and give a speech. My theory is he could have waited. If the reasons given in the letter were true, that he was fired because of his testimony about Hillary Clinton's emails, then it wasn't that pressing. Parenthetically, that's the pretext that Trump seized upon to hide behind. That's not why he fired Comey. It could have waited until he had sit down with the president or at least Attorney General Jeff Sessions personally. In other words, professionally and with honor. Have the ball. If you're going to fire the guy, have the balls to do it face to face. In all honesty, if Trump were that upset that Comey chose not to pursue a case against Hillary Clinton, he could have replaced Comey, here we go again, in January or during the transition. But again, he did not. Obviously, the Clinton issue was not that big of a concern to Trump. I find the idea of Comey finding out about his firing from TV to be distasteful, to say the least. And I'm not the only one. Florida Representative Carlos Curbelo agrees and tweeted out his feelings. Here's the tweet, or the quote from the tweet. No one should find out via the television that they've been fired. If true, that's poor form and plain unprofessional. Kind of hard to argue with that conclusion, isn't it? Curbelo added in a separate statement that Comey's ouster must not impede the FBI's probe of the Russian government's efforts to influence our last election, which, if you will recall, is much bigger than Trump. Much bigger. Because they've done this to other countries over the last few years. When you think about it, social media is a godsend for foreign intelligence. And as we're going to get to somewhere in this series of videos and podcasts, foreign intelligence is looking at Trump's tweets as a gold mine, or a gold mine of intelligence just to develop psychological profiles of Trump in order to make him, how long have I said this? Trump is effortless to manipulate. All you have to do is stroke your ego and he will curl up in your lap like a poodle. And all you have to do to earn his ire is to make it look like somebody has slighted him, has insulted him, and then he's off to the races. We don't need an impulsive president. That gets back to the whole fitness argument once again. Congress and the American people need a transparent explanation as to how this decision was reached and why it was executed at this time. Close quote. Several lawmakers have suggested that they will be seeking some clarification from Attorney General Sessions or Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein on their recommendation to fire Comey. Now, it's since come out that Rosenstein said, well, I would have made this recommendation anyway for the reasons I gave, but again, Trump came out a day or two after the firing and said, well, I wanted to fire Comey anyway. So he admitted that the reason that Rosenstein gave for why Comey had to go, although it was a perfectly legitimate reason, that's not why Trump did it. All he had to do was keep his mouth shut, keep those things to himself, and just say, yeah, this is why I did it. What Rosenstein said. That's all. Just do that. But no, instead, Trump has to keep digging. My friends, I think very little of White House propagandist Sean Spicer. I think very little of anybody that would go to work for Donald Trump, but I tell you what, if anything could make me feel sympathy toward the man, this last 2 weeks would do it. See, remember, Sean Spicer was away last week, fulfilling his commitment in the Naval Reserves. So he wasn't present for any of this, and he didn't. And then this is the maelstrom to which he returned. And it drove him to hide in the White House bushes when the media tried to get answers from him. Now you may say, oh, media jackals, but hey, this is the media. This is what they do. Trump put Spicer in this position. And frankly, I can't blame him for his response. I mean, look, Trump fired Comey, then told his communications people, go and say this. Then the next day, he totally contradicts what they went out to say on his behalf. Then he turned around and blamed his communications people for the resulting mess, the resulting bleep storm. You see why working in the White House communication shop would kill me? White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer took avoiding the media to a whole new level following the announcement of James Comey's firing. Some people might don disguises, others might run quickly from the press with a raincoat over their head. Spicer put his own unique twist on it, which, I mean, Melissa McCarthy has a job for the next 4 years, assuming Spicer lasts that long. This is a quote from the Washington Post. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer wrapped up his brief interview with Fox Business from the White House grounds late Tuesday night and then disappeared into the shadows, huddling with his staff behind a tall hedge. To get back to his office, Spicer would have to pass a swarm of reporters wanting to know why Trump suddenly decided to fire the FBI director. In other words, he'd run out of cover, metaphorically and literally. This was apparently the culmination of a good 3 hours of the White House communications shop bungling, but they didn't bungle it. Trump bungled it. They went out and dutifully tried to communicate the White House line, and then Trump blew it out of the water. And then Trump blamed them for it. Spicer had originally wanted to send the news via email, but the transmission took too long. So, of course, the next best thing was for him to shout the details of the firing from the press room door to any media who happened to be in earshot. After which, he locked himself in his office, hoping there would be no follow-up questions, but no doubt looking to see if he could shimmy out a window. Turns out there were just a few questions being asked about the firing, and Spicer, Kellyanne Conway, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders were then seen speed-walking up the White House drive to defend the president on CNN, Fox News, and Fox Business. After which the trio and other White House staff convened behind the bushes. After Spicer spent several minutes hidden in the bushes behind these sets, Janet Montesi, an executive assistant in the press office, emerged and told reporters that Spicer would answer some questions as long as he was not filmed doing so. Spicer then emerged. Like he's like the Wizard of Oz behind the green curtain or something. Just turn the lights off. Turn the lights off, he ordered. We'll take care of this. Can you just turn that light off? My God, the metaphor here, the optics are just unbelievably putrid. Turn off the cameras, turn off the lights. Transparency. But again, you almost can't blame them because you don't know what Trump is going to say next. Trump is absolutely fractally chaotic, frenetic, and these people have to keep up with this crap. Forget getting in front of it. They got to somehow keep up with it. And I don't think anybody can. This is why you have a White House communication shop in the first place. They're supposed to craft the message, not you, referring to Trump. Trump should not have Twitter. He should not be allowed to use Twitter. This is why you have a White House communication shop. They're supposed to do this, not you, if you're POTUS. That's how you, to the maximum degree that you can at any given time, control the narrative. In politics, you need to control the narrative. And it needs to make sense. It needs to be coherent so that you can make the best possible case for your message. But this is why you need to control the narrative. That's the purpose of it. That's the point of having a White House communication shop, so that you can control the narrative, control the issue, make the best possible case for whatever you're trying to say, for your message, whether it's on a piece of legislation, whether it's on a foreign policy decision, and whether, in the case of playing defense on a scandal. You want to maximize your control of the issue. You can't do that without a coherent message. That's why you have the White House communication shop. They're supposed to craft the president's communications for him. Oh, it's great that Trump communicates directly with the American people over Twitter. Then why does he need a White House communication shop at all? Why does he need them if he's got Twitter? Why does he need Spicer? Why does he need Kellyanne Conway? Why does he need Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Why does he need any of these people? He uses Twitter. Because they can't do their jobs. They can't do their jobs. If he's going out there and contradicting himself 6 ways before breakfast, then they can't do their jobs. All they're doing is constant 24/7, 365 damage control. And they can't even do that because Trump keeps ripping open what they just tried to repair. If I had to work in that White House communication shop, I would be dead in weeks. My blood pressure would kill me. Which makes it so blessed that I don't work in the White House communication shop. I mean, aside from the fact of having to lie on a daily basis for a man I don't support, don't believe in, and don't believe anything he says, that would be stressful enough, folks. I mean, the bottom line here is, like I said, the optics were not good. And I don't know how many times I've said this over the past 5 months. Optics. Perception is 9/10 of reality in politics. Trump refuses to get that. So, I mean, at least Spicer could have covered it by saying, well, I was just over here in the bushes taking a leak, Now, as you all know, I am a constitutionalist. And, of course, I was one of the editors of 25 Myths of the United States Constitution by Douglas V. Gibbs. One of those 25 myths is the notion, the concept of the co-equal branches of the federal government. No, they're not supposed to be co-equal. Congress is supposed to be preeminent. Congress comes first, then the president, then the Supreme Court. That's how it's supposed to work. Congress is supposed to be the most powerful, preeminent branch of the federal government. Why? Because Congress is the closest to the people and the states. That's how the founders designed it. Now, of course, we've got it all bass-ackwards these days. I mean, in practice, the Supreme Court is the most powerful branch of government, and it was never intended to be that way. And the president has way too much power because Congress has ceded it through creating these unconstitutional, gargantuan police agencies under the guise of bureaucracy, you know, Environmental Protection Agency, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, you know, all these alphabet soup agencies, FDA, FTA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Environmental Pollution Agency, all these different things. And in the process of doing that, Congress ceded much of its lawmaking authority to these agencies in the form of endless tides, avalanches of regulation. That's not supposed to be the way it works. The executive branch does not have lawmaking authority under the Constitution. Article 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 1, all legislative power, see, right here, Constitution, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. Congress comes in Article 1, President's powers in Article 2, Supreme Court in Article 3. That's supposed to be the order, the hierarchy. So Congress is supposed to be, under the Constitution, has the sole lawmaking authority. And Erik Erikson, the resurgent, a fellow conservative Ronin, points out that the Comey firing provides Congress with an opportunity to reassert itself. They won't, of course, but it's an opportunity to do so. Now think about this. Had Barack Obama fired James Comey, as so many on the left wanted, no one would be complaining. In fact, I think it is notable that when Bill Clinton, while being investigated by the FBI, fired William Sessions, who was then FBI director, there was no outrage. The level of partisanship in Washington right now is off the charts. Everyone screaming about a constitutional crisis is out of their bloody minds. Again, at the very most, it's wildly premature to say those things. This is why hyperbole is not a smart thing to do. It's not a smart thing in which to engage, especially in the realm of politics. Because when you get to the point of an actual constitutional crisis, well, what do you say then? Take him out and shoot him? I mean, just let's not get our horses. In politics, I learned a long time ago, in politics, you got to pace yourself. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just, what are the facts, and let's just see where they lead. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Did James Comey need to go? Well, there's a case to be made for that. There's a case to be made against it. But Erikson believes so. And there's a case to be made for it. Like I say, I didn't have any problem with Comey being fired. What was stupid was how Trump and when Trump did it. Ron Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, effectively made the case in his letter to Trump, and no one disputes the claims he made. The hang-up is that Donald Trump fired James Comey and put a Democrat in charge of the FBI until someone else is appointed. Brilliant! The outrage is silly, given that Andrew McCabe will serve in the interim. Members of the media swept up into a frenzy after months of wanting Comey fired is another reminder that the supposed fourth branch of government is really a wing of the Democrat Party. But again, the sky is blue, the sun comes up in the morning, water is wet. We're not breaking any new ground here. The reality here, however, is that Trump's actions have paved the way for Congress to reassert itself and its powers, should they actually recognize that opportunity. Over the past 16 years, members of both parties have abdicated more and more responsibility to the executive branch. They have allowed the executive branch to legislate through the regulatory process. They have allowed the executive branch to disperse funds through automatic payments and discretionary use of funds. The only thing Congress does anymore is show trials when the party opposite the White House controls the Congress. But even then, that party too allows the executive to operate beyond the limits the founders intended. Democrats allowed President Bush to operate far beyond what they should have, which is hard to believe. Republicans allowed Barack Obama to do the same, which is less hard to believe. Donald Trump firing the FBI director gives Congress a chance to reassert its powers as the first and preeminent, not co-equal, preeminent branch of government. The House of Representatives should engage and probe honestly the FBI in its investigation into Russia. The House Republicans should support Representative Justin Amash's effort for an independent review of Russian involvement in the presidential election. The Senate should take its confirmation process of the FBI director seriously. Both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate have an obligation to ensure an independent, competent director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. There should be no yes man, no boot-licking, ass-kissing sycophant, and the burden here is on Republicans. They have repeatedly rallied to Trump as party cheerleaders. Now they have a constitutional obligation to put Article 1 of the Constitution ahead of the Republican Party. Anybody who believes they'll do that, stand on your head. Congress should dust off Article 1 and read it, and then put it into practice. They have ceded too much power to the second branch. The firing of James Comey provides an opportunity for Congress to take back some of its power, rein in regulators, drain the swamp, and use its investigative powers wisely. Yeah, I'm not counting on it either.